So good day to everyone. I'm Julius Cainglit from the Federation of Free Workers. We are based in the Philippines, and we are one of the 4 national unions affiliated with the International Trade Union Confederation, and one of the 5 affiliates of the Building and Woodworkers International. And what I'm about to share is a very important fight, not only for us Filipinos, but it's also a fight worldwide, because what can I say is that when we started the fight, we got the support of the global unions, and that's one thing we're very thankful for. First number I want to show is 43. So 43 is the number of trade unions and organizers that were killed in 2019 when trade unions of the Philippines raised the issue with the International Labor Organization. So the killings were born out of a state policy which emanates from the president himself, Duterte before, who at the beginning was friends with some of the sections of the progressive movement, but eventually announced and implemented war against the progressives. Initially, as part of this unjust war against the poor, there was this very unpopular drug war, which has led to unofficial figures of 30,000 supposedly drug users and pushers getting killed, but none of the suppliers of the big drugs getting their time in jail. So that was the big problem. Instead of the war on drugs, we saw it as the war against the poor. And this eventually flowed through and affected also workers who, as I've mentioned, 43 of them got killed. Now, the next figure I'm going to show is, this is very difficult. Okay, so aside from killings, there were different attempts of government to discourage trade unionism, and these are direct and indirect attempts, and they have been in cahoots with a lot of employers. There are many cases of red tagging, where a lot of unionists were being tagged as communists, and through these pronouncements, workers were being directly and indirectly encouraged from joining trade unions. So, aside from the killings and harassment, which includes a lot of our picket lines getting run over by the police, there's also this issue of 555. So what is 555? Well, under Philippine laws, you are supposed to be regularized at work on your 6th month, regardless if you had a contract or not. So what companies do is that when you reach your 5th month, whether it be for cause or not, you get fired. So they avoid getting you regularized. And the killings and the continued precarious conditions of workers led to the ILO decision at the 2019 International Labor Conference to ask the Philippines to accept a high-level tripartite mission. And it is at this stage where I say that the Philippines got a lot of support from the Council of Global Unions, because during the report on the Philippines, CGU leaders were present. And in fact, after the proceedings at the ILO, the Filipino affiliates bonded themselves and formed the CGU Philipinnes, which, among others, wants to follow through on the decision of the ILO to come up with the high-level tripartite mission, which should go to the Philippines to look into the killings and other violations of freedom of association principles. Now, instead of the state acting in favor of the workers because of these complaints that they received, what we got was 11479, or Republic Act 11479, establishing the Anti-Terrorism Act. And this has become one of the main instruments that the state has been using to harass workers and other rights defenders. It has also been an instrument that they have been using to prevent the progressive movement, no, from coming up with their advocacies and pressuring government to do what is good and what is right. So among the major provisions that we oppose is 24 days. What does 24 days mean? It means under the law, if you have been tagged by the Anti-Terrorism Council as a terrorist, or that you are part of an organization that has been regarded as a terrorist organization, you can be detained for 24 days total without any warrant of arrest being served to you or without any explanation as to why you have been detained. So among others, aside from a direct attack on freedom of association principles, it's also a direct attack on our basic human rights. And so we fought. And one of the main articulations of how unions fought is 9/37. What does that mean? It means that the workers and trade unions filed the 9th petition of the 37 petitions that contested the Anti-Terrorism Act and wanted the Supreme Court to regard it as unconstitutional. However, despite all of our efforts, because the ATA was enacted in July 2020, and in late December 2021, we already got a decision from the Supreme Court that it is constitutional. And so, upon second appeal and third appeal, we were able to make certain provisions, especially on how to define terrorism. We were able to make it unconstitutional, but not the whole law. Anyway, again, instead of working for workers, for the benefit of workers and the respect for their rights, one of the main instruments, aside from the Anti-Terrorism Act, that the government has used is 70, or EO 70, Executive Order 70, establishing the National Task Force to End the Communist Local Armed Conflict. And they've practically used this to outlaw unions. Imagine PNP, Philippine National Police, and military personnel asking workers to join quote-unquote trade union seminars, even at the presence of the Department of Labor and Employment, and telling them that, hey, strikes are illegal, you should not go on strike. Which is not consistent with our laws, because the Philippines is a signatory to ILO Convention 87, and our own Bill of Rights says that we have the right to we have freedom of speech, of expression, of the press, to peaceably assemble and to form and join unions. And also, this has been an instrument used by the police to discourage unions, especially inside eco zones. Inside eco zones, instead of fulfilling the mandate to form tripartite committees, meaning involving employers, workers, and government, to work for the good of workers, what the Philippine National Police and the eco zone authorities did was to establish the Joint Industrial Peace Concerns Office, which, while it may sound good, is actually bad for the workers. Among other things, they want this body to approve any and all workers and trade union activities that one wants to do inside the eco zone. And second, they force you into disaffiliating to your union, meaning despite having the freedom of choice to join and form any union of your own choosing, we are being forced to dismember or disaffiliate ourselves from the unions that we chose to build and chose to join. And so the harassments continued, and the next important number is 7 for BS. Well, not bullshit, but it's similar to that. 7 BS, because in March 7, on the eve of Women's Day of 2021, Bloody Sunday happened, where 7 workers, leaders, organizers were killed in simultaneous raids and search procedures by the police. And this has led to, of course, it gave a very chilling effect, and it has discouraged a lot of our workers from joining unions. So aside from 7, a very crucial number is also 56. Despite the pandemic, the number of workers who have been killed has reached 56 in 2022, and government is still not bent on doing anything. In fact, it took them 3 years. It took them 3 years to finally formally accept the ILO high-level mission. So from 2019, it was only in 2022 when it formally accepted the ILO high-level tripartite mission. And yet, despite accepting it on paper, the actual mission has not happened. It was supposed to happen in September, in October, and then eventually, using different excuses, including the pandemic, they are now scheduling it for next year, late January, early February. So which means, even with the change in government, it seems there's no seriousness in trying to address the killings of workers and other violations of freedom of association principles. 6 years. It's not only the length of the term of the Duterte administration, but in those 6 years, including this year, the Philippines has ranked as one of the 10 worst places for workers per ITUC Global Rights Index. And this is, of course, based on their own findings, their own research, which has proved that the killings has been continuing and that the culture of impunity makes it impossible for these killings to stop because no one is being made responsible for the killings that have happened and no one is getting any jail time for what they have done. And so our calls are, number one, to make sure that the tripartite high-level mission finally become a reality. Second, that we also exert all efforts to make the Duterte government accountable to their crimes and that to make sure that the International Criminal Court gets to do what they have to do inside the Philippines for their investigation and prosecution, and that there should be a law to address security of tenure which has been pending for the past 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius.